There was once a store that people traveled across countries to visit. It sold every genre of music you could imagine. And members of the staff were so knowledgeable, they could explain how the Ramones influenced the Buzzcocks and how the Smiths cut the path for Oasis. And millions of music fans loved them for it. The store was Tower Records. And while they had embraced the switch from vinyl to 8-track to cassettes to CDs, always keeping their shelves stocked with the latest and greatest ways to listen to music, their leadership feared the next evolution: digital music. And this fear became the biggest enemy of their success. Hi everyone, I'm Terrace Wayner, and welcome to another episode of A Case Study in Corporate Fear, where I do the forensics to better understand how and why fear transforms brave leaders of thriving companies into spineless failures of corporate catastrophes, all so you never do. And while most know the names of failures like Blockbuster, Kodak, BlackBerry, and Yahoo, what most don't know is that the true mastermind behind their collapse was fear. In today's case study, we analyze Tower Records and how fear of change turned the mecca of music into an empty concert hall faster than you could download the times they are a-changin'. But before we dive into the downfall, it's critical to understand what a dominant cultural force Tower Records had built before they let fear turn its volume dial to 11. Tower Records was the brainchild of Russ Solomon, who started selling used records out of his father's Sacramento drugstore in 1941. And when the used records consistently sold out, he turned to selling new ones. But the Tower Records we came to know and love began in 1960 when Solomon opened his first standalone store on Broadway in Sacramento, California. In his heart and soul, Solomon deeply believed that music was incredibly meaningful to people's lives. His dream was to create a supermarket-sized store dedicated to the love of music. And it would not just have the hit records like most stores of the time. It would include a far-reaching music catalog across all genres. He called it a deep inventory approach, and it made Tower a destination for serious music fans seeking rare and obscure recordings. With stores open past midnight, listening stations to sample new albums, and a staff that was passionate about every genre of music, Tower Records quickly became a cultural hub for music lovers. It was so successful, it quickly expanded, opening in cities across the country, then around the world. And when it did, Solomon did something that was unlike most retail chains. He centralized purchasing decisions, empowering each store to do its own ordering based on local tastes of the community. The genius of this is that it allowed Tower stores to better serve their communities and build loyalty. And with each store he opened, Solomon maintained this principle. And because of this, each Tower Records became more than a store. They became a community center where friends and neighbors connected over music. Many of the stores were over 24,000 square feet, stocking over 100,000 titles, an assortment unheard of at the time. Tower's flagship location in Tokyo's Shibuya district became the largest music store in the world, spreading across 9 floors with each level dedicated to a different genre. This way of being led to their famous motto, "No music, no life." And the reason it was considered brilliant marketing was because it was a genuine reflection of the company's DNA. Tower Records had turned the act of buying music into a sensory journey. There was a distinctive smell of vinyl, the walls were covered with massive album art, and the staff always wanted to talk music. This was the magic of Tower Records. Every day, debates would break out on the merits of obscure B-sides, or which pressing of a vinyl had the best sound quality. Interviews to work at the store were never about working in retail. They were about proving your music knowledge, and they hired based on it. A lifelong customer tells this story. The staff were like music therapists. They understood my mood and would recommend the perfect album to make me feel better. They weren't just employees who happened to work at a music store. They were devotees of music. And working at Tower became a rite of passage for music fanatics. In a building of music, the employees were the rock stars. And many of them became rock stars themselves. Dave Grohl worked at Tower before joining Nirvana. And when Axl Rose was a Tower Video employee, he would shove flyers for his new band Guns N' Roses into customers' bags. All of this made it the music store for musicians. Bruce Springsteen, Ella Fitzgerald, Ringo Starr, Stevie Wonder, and Elvis Costello were often seen browsing the aisles and chatting with staff. Elton John famously shopped at the Sunset Strip location in Los Angeles every Tuesday morning when he was in town, often spending thousands of dollars in a single visit. In a 1976 interview, Elton said, "If I weren't a rock star, I would have worked at Tower Records." Rod Stewart loved performing in the parking lot on a Saturday afternoon. Prince would casually drop by to workshop a new song. Aerosmith, Keith Richards, Dolly Parton, and James Brown drew thousands of fans for autograph sessions. David Bowie could be found talking English imports at the info booth at the center of the store. And even though he famously would not endorse any products, John Lennon loved the store so much that in 1973, he recorded a voiceover for a Tower Records commercial.
Did you know that the largest record store in the known world universe is here in Los Angeles? It is, and it's called Tower Records. And Tower Records is located in the heart of the Sunset Strip. At Tower, you'll find tens of thousands of your favorite LPs and tapes and a few drunk pop stars. And you'll find that they are all super discount priced. Tower will always save you money on the LPs and tapes you buy. You'll find more rock LPs than you ever thought existed. And that includes more imported rock LPs. You'll find more jazz, more classics, more easy listening, more country, more international, more spoken word, more of everything than you've ever seen in one store at one time. It sounds like heaven. And you'll find thousands of 45 RPM singles. In short, the largest record store in the known universe lives up to its name. Shop Tower Records in the heart of Sunset Strip tonight and every night of the year until midnight. It is a good place. And Tower will have my latest album this afternoon, so go get it.
The Sunset Strip store in Los Angeles stayed open until 1 a.m. on weekends and became a concert venue, often creating chaos. In 1988, the city had to shut down the Sunset Strip for several hours because David Lee Roth decided to rappel down a replica of the Matterhorn built on the record store's roof to deliver his album, Skyscraper. And the following year, Alice Cooper caused a traffic jam when he drove up to the store in a huge garbage truck to deliver his album, Trash. The numbers tell a staggering success story. At its peak in 1999, Tower Records generated $1.1 billion in annual revenue. They operated more than 200 stores across 18 countries on 5 continents and employed over 3,000 passionate music experts. The average Tower Records customer spent 40 minutes in the store per visit, nearly 4 times longer than the average retail experience, creating a level of customer loyalty most retailers could only dream of. They didn't want you to just buy music. They wanted you to discover it and buy the music you loved. Russ Solomon built Tower Records into a cultural institution that shaped how generations experienced music. Their innovative browse box concept, where customers could listen to albums before purchasing, revolutionized music retail, increasing album sales by 40%. Tower Records had reached a state of perfect happiness. Everything was working and everyone loved them. But then, in June of 1999, a little company emerged from a dorm room of Boston's Northeastern University that would destroy Tower's nirvana. The name of the company was Napster. Founded by Sean Fanning and Sean Parker, Napster introduced the world to a new concept: digital music sharing, or as the record industry loved calling it at the time, piracy. What made Napster revolutionary wasn't just the ability to download music for free, though that was certainly its most obvious appeal. The true innovation was its peer-to-peer architecture that allowed users to connect directly to each other's hard drives and share MP3 files without a central server storing the music, also known as a music store. It was decentralized, and it was devastating to the traditional music business model. You see, before Napster, music discovery was a carefully controlled pipeline. It was a gatekeeping system that operated through a carefully orchestrated network of relationships between record labels, radio stations, and TV networks like MTV and VH1. The system gave a small number of powerful entities enormous control over what music reached the public's ears and when. And retailers like Tower Records was a key link between the record labels and the consumer. The labels controlled the distribution to the record stores, managed the relationships with radio stations, and coordinated bands touring and appearances. Napster blew that model apart, creating a vast digital library of virtually all recorded music, available instantly and for free. And those holding the reins went apoplectic. Overnight, two 19-year-old college kids had transformed music from a physical product you had to purchase into a digital service you could access anywhere with an internet connection. Fanning and Parker didn't just create a file-sharing program, they fundamentally altered how an entire generation perceived the value and ownership of music. But rather than innovating and embracing this new way of sharing music, the music industry responded with a tidal wave of lawsuits, putting all of their resources behind protecting what made them successful. And while labels and retailers were busy fighting in court, they missed the profound consumer behavior shift happening right in front of them. The digital genie was out of the bottle, and no amount of legal action could put it back in. Once people got the taste of the convenience, choice, and immediacy of digital music, they wanted it more and more, and many came to want it more than physical music. What the record industry and Tower Records failed to grasp was that Napster wasn't just about free music. It was about a new relationship between listeners and music, one that prioritized access over ownership. In a 1999 interview that should be enshrined in the Business Blunder Hall of Fame, Russ Solomon said, "Downloading music is just a fad. People want the tactile experience of browsing in a store. They want to hold an album in their hands, read the liner notes, feel the weight of it." This wasn't just standard corporate dismissiveness. This was the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar music retailer who had dedicated his life to connecting people with the music they loved, and failing to see that the way people consume that music was changing forever. Here's the thing. It was still the same music people loved from the same artists they followed. This was just a new way to listen to it, one that Tower could have and should have just made space for. The same way they did when new technologies like cassette tapes and CDs came along. When that happened, they embraced it and stocked the shelves and kept preaching the power of music. But let's be fair to Solomon for a moment. The stats of the time seem to support his position. In 1999, the same year as the birth of Napster, CD sales reached an all-time high of $14.6 billion in the United States. Tower's revenue peaked that same year. The industry appeared stronger than ever. This amazing success blinded them from acknowledging the fundamental shift in how consumers wanted to listen to music, even though they had the data telling them otherwise. Former Tower Records marketing director recounted, "We had consumer research showing young people's growing preference for digital formats, but our leadership viewed this as a niche behavior that would never replace physical media. The idea of adapting our business model to this new reality was seen as almost sacrilegious." Again, this is such an odd hill to defend. This was a company dedicated to music, and now they were putting all of their effort into protecting how the music was delivered. Anyway, this fear of the future manifested in what organizational psychologists call identity threat, the anxiety that emerges when a core aspect of an organization's identity is challenged. For Tower Records, they thought their identity was inextricably linked to physical media like vinyl and CDs. And the prospect of becoming a digital music retailer was viewed as an abandonment of everything the company stood for. But if they had just looked a layer deeper, they would realize their identity and the reason people loved them was actually their personal love and deep knowledge of music. And it really didn't matter if it was vinyl, CD, or an MP3. A former Tower executive revealed, "We had a meeting in 2000 where we discussed creating an online music store, The tech team had actually built a very cool prototype, but senior leadership killed it the moment they saw it, arguing that we're in the business of selling physical music in physical stores to real people. Online doesn't fit who we are. This fear of losing their identity was compounded by Tower's fear of alienating their core loyal customers, the music enthusiasts who spent hours browsing their massive collections. And while management was preaching that these loyal customers would never abandon physical media for digital alternatives, these loyal customers were ripping their CDs like a bat out of hell, creating MP3s so they could listen to them on their iPods that let them carry 1,000 songs in their pocket. For many people, that was their entire music collection. By 2003, Apple had not only sold over 2 million iPods, but their iTunes store had sold over 25 million songs in its first 8 months. In November of that year, Apple reported selling 1.5 million songs in a single week. The shift to digital was happening faster than anyone predicted. And instead of the revolution being driven by a company with a deep and passionate connection to music, it was a tech company with absolutely no connection to music that was driving the change. Tower's response to their entire world being lit on fire was to retreat into the comfort of what made it successful. This is a common response from a company knee-deep in fear. The first thing they did was double down on physical retail, opening even more stores and expanding their footprint at precisely the moment they should have been pivoting to digital. And after investing hundreds of millions in retail infrastructure, the massive new stores, the extensive inventory, and the global supply chain, the last thing they wanted to entertain was a digital offering. A former Tower CFO explained, "We ran the numbers on launching a digital platform, and they showed that for every dollar we earned in digital sales, we'd lose $3 in physical sales. But what the analysis didn't show was that those physical sales were going to disappear anyway." This fear of cannibalization is a classic trap that has ensnared countless companies. The rational business mind looks at the immediate numbers and sees digital music as something that will destroy value. But what Tower failed to account for was that the inevitable digital disruption would occur whether the company participated or not. They were operating under the assumption that CD sales would continue their upward trajectory forever. And when the digital music disruption accelerated, Tower found itself in a precarious financial position with over $300 million in debt. Stan Goman, Tower's COO, reflected, "We became so focused on servicing our debt that innovation became an afterthought. Every decision was viewed through the lens of, will this help us make our next debt payment, rather than, will this position us for the future?" While Tower Records was paralyzed by the thought of losing its identity, driving away its core customer, cannibalizing themselves, and being hundreds of millions in debt, competitors were moving aggressively into the digital future. Apple's iTunes store was offering individual songs for 99 cents. This was a direct challenge to the album-based sales model that Tower Records depended on. It's hard to remember, but at stores like Tower, you couldn't just buy one song. For example, if you loved Ice Ice Baby from Vanilla Ice, you had to buy the entire To the Extreme album. But the upside to buying the album was that you also got the special hidden track, Havin' a Roni. Anyway, the next company to enter the music retail space was Amazon, initially selling CDs online but clearly positioning themselves for the digital future. Then Best Buy and Walmart began aggressively discounting CDs as loss leaders, pricing them well below what Tower could match. A former Tower buyer recalled, "We'd see Best Buy selling new releases for $9 that cost us $12 at wholesale. It was impossible to compete with that." The data tells the story of Tower's rapid decline. In 2003, Tower's revenue dropped 24%, while during that same year, digital music sales grew by 200%. By August 2006, as physical CD sales across all stores continued their freefall, Tower Records filed for bankruptcy protection, listing approximately $200 million in debt. In October of that year, the company was liquidated, selling all of its physical assets for just $150 million, a fraction of its former billion-dollar valuation. But the public's love for music was far from dead. In fact, it was thriving. The same year Tower declared bankruptcy, digital music sales exceeded $2 billion. The difference was now it was serviced by a tech company's algorithm, not a music savant with the deep knowledge of Muddy Waters, Led Zeppelin, Rush, and Pearl Jam. What's particularly tragic about Tower's demise is that they actually had the resources and brand equity to become a digital music leader. First, their name was synonymous with music, and they had deep relationships with every one of the major labels. They also employed thousands of music experts whose knowledge could have been leveraged for recommendation algorithms or curated playlists, the exact features that later made services like Beats Music and Spotify successful. In 2004, Tower did attempt a belated entry into the digital space by launching Tower Records Digital, but it was too little, too late. The platform was clunky, offered limited selection, and failed to integrate with the in-store experience in any meaningful way. I want to be clear that not everyone at Tower Records was paralyzed by the fear of change. In 2000, Kevin Cassidy, Tower's head of IT, presented a comprehensive digital strategy that included an online music store, subscription service, and integration with the company's physical locations. The plan would have cost $25 million to implement, a significant investment, but one that could have positioned Tower at the forefront of digital music retail. Cassidy later recalled, "I was told that digital wasn't where our customers were. I tried to explain that it was exactly where our customers were going, but by then, the fear of change had taken over." Cassidy wound up leaving Tower Records to join Apple's growing iTunes team. Another dissenting voice came from Mike Ferris, Tower's senior VP of marketing, who pushed for the company to partner with emerging digital platforms rather than fighting them. Ferris said, "We had the brand, they had the technology. It could have been a perfect match, but there was too much fear of what it would mean for our traditional business." His proposal was for Tower to become a curated gateway to digital music, leveraging their staff's expertise to guide consumers through the expanding digital landscape. But the idea was rejected because it was not aligned with Tower Records' core business. Both Cassidy and Ferris understood what the rest of Tower's leadership couldn't see, that Tower Records wasn't in the business of selling plastic discs. They were in the business of connecting people with the music they loved. They were true believers in Tower Records' mantra, "No music, no life." A crucial lesson from Tower Records' collapse is that a company's greatest strength can also become its greatest weakness. Tower's expertise in physical music retail, once their competitive advantage, became an anchor dragging them down when they refused to evolve beyond it. Imagine if Tower had leveraged their unparalleled music knowledge to become the Spotify of the early 2000s. Their thousands of music-obsessed employees could have created the world's best recommendation engine years before algorithmic suggestions became standard. Tower could have transformed their massive physical locations into experiential spaces that complemented rather than competed with digital offerings. Think Apple Store for music. These could have become places where people could discover, experience, and connect with music in ways that are impossible to do online. They could have created a hybrid model that bridged physical and digital. Buy an album in store, get the digital version free, or discover music online, pick up a physical copy or exclusive merchandise in store. Tower Records' superpower was always about accelerating music discovery and amplifying its enjoyment. And I think another crucial lesson we can all learn from their failure is always to define your company by the customer needs you serve, not the medium through which you serve it. The medium should always be secondary to the mission. The other lesson to take from this case is leadership must create a culture where challenging the status quo isn't just permitted, but encouraged. Tower's top-down management style silenced the very voices that could have saved them. That's why it's crucial to always be on the lookout for fearful behavior disguised as strategic wisdom, to recognize when protecting our core business really means avoiding necessary change, to see when staying true to our identity actually means refusing to evolve. By understanding how insidious fear can be, how it can operate through seemingly rational decisions that lead to disaster, you'll be armed with everything you need so you can see when fear is coming for you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of A Case Study in Corporate Fear. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on how fear might be affecting your organization, as well as what company you would like to see covered next. For more case studies and to further understand the impact fear can have on your company, visit fear-incorporated.com. You will also find the sources and citations used to fact-check this episode.